It's 1985, there's monsters down there, and they're out of the pit. So the year's 1985, and Steve Jackson and Neil Livingstone decide to release an encyclopaedia of monsters. It's a bestiary of creatures from 1981 to 1985, and it's called Out of the Pit. So this is the A4 release of this book. It's not a game book, it's basically a monster encyclopedia, as I just said. So this copy I've got here, as you can see, it's not the best condition. On the right hand side there's a bit of damage there, and this is actually mirrored right through the pages of this book. Now the front cover artist of this book is Christos Achilleos, and you can see his emblem down the right hand side at the bottom there. It's copyrighted as well, 1985. The front cover hosts a variety of different creatures and monsters you will encounter from Gamebooks number 1 to 5. And there's some old favourites on the front cover as well, you may recognise. Down the bottom it says 250 monsters from the wild and dangerous worlds of fighting fantasy. And at the top it says Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone, edited by Mark Gascoigne. So we look at the back of the book here, and it just gives a wee brief description. It says, out of the pit they come, from the darkest corners, from the deepest pools and dungeons thought only to exist in nightmares come the fighting fantasy monsters, the downfall of many a brave warrior. 250 of these loathsome creatures from the wild and dangerous worlds of fighting fantasy are collected here. Some are old adversaries, many you have yet to meet, each of them described in minute detail, an indispensable guide for fighting fantasy adventurers. Full monster statistics, 250 illustrations, 8 full pages in colour, maps, tables and charts. And it says cover illustration by Christos Achilleos. And the price for this back in the day, 1985, was actually £3.95. A big difference from today, that's for sure. So I'll give a wee look inside this book and see what we've got here. I'm just going to move the camera up, this position, hopefully it's in focus. So the front page, it says introduction there by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone about fighting fantasy. It says Fighting Fantasy Monsters Out of the Pit, edited by Mark Gascoigne. And again it's got contents, and the publication date of this one's 1985, as I said. Another wee introduction by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone, who have signed this bit here. The Land of Danger. And then we move on to some maps, and you can see this here. This is Alancia, the fighting fantasy world with different areas and regions within Alancia. Moving on to the next page of it, we have Kakabad and the Shamutanti Hills. Now that's a sorcery series by Steve Jackson, and it's fantastic. And hopefully in the very near future I'll have a wee look at the game books as well. Different areas of this region. Kakabad. Then it says the creatures of Alancia and beyond, so it gives a wee rundown of description there as well. And then basically the next page you're on to the creatures and monsters of the fighting fantasy world. And you've got an ape man there, great ape, giant aardwolf, etc. So the fighting fantasy world opened the minds of young readers up to all these creatures and monsters from the minds of Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. And before that I was always interested in like creatures, etc., especially from Greek mythology, like the centaur and minotaur, and particularly one game book, which is the Forest of Doom, does contain a minotaur and centaur. And one other creature of particular interest in was the werewolf, and that is featured in Forest of Doom as well. Also Medusa, as you can see there, and the Gorgon. And here in fact is the Minotaur from the Forest of Doom, and it gives stats on it, like skill, stamina, habitat, number encountered 1, type humanoid, reaction hostile. So there's various stats of each creature in this book. And Blood Beast, which dons a cover of Death Trap Dungeon, game book number 6. So this book does not only have all the different alphabetical creatures you get in the Fighting Fantasy Worlds, it also has I think it's 8 pages of fantastic artwork by various artists from the Fighting Fantasy world. You can see it there. This is just awesome. You can see the artwork there. Look at that there. That's pretty terrifying. Fantastic. Now this one's more like akin to Citadel of Chaos. I think it's Emmanuel. Was no, Christos Achilleos was the artist in that one. I think Emmanuel in the front cover. A griffin, type creature, an elf, and the symbolic shapeshifter or shape changer from the Forest of Doom. This is one of the iconic images of Fighting Fantasy ever to be put in a game book. A fantastic image. That dawned in the front cover. It was quite terrifying back in the day. I think it's Ian McCaig done that one. Yep, so that's basically what this book contains. And quickly, before I forget, at the back of the book there are encounter tables and a quick description. It says, when adventurers are exploring an unfamiliar part of the world, there are always a chance or a possibility that they will stumble across a particular creature by chance, a random encounter. The following tables may be used when the games master decides that a wandering monster has suddenly turned up, and alternatively you could be used when designing your own adventures. So these creatures have areas and they have rule numbers next to them as well. So this version of the game book was released in '85. However, there was another version that was released in 1989, a pocket-sized version, and this is it here. Out of the Pit, 1989. Now this version was more compressed, condensed, etc. It was smaller, it was pocket-sized. The front cover again is by Christos Achilleos, and it's slightly more vibrant. There's more detail in the front cover here, a bit more contrast. Obviously it's newer. It's the same descriptions, edited by Mark Gascoigne. If you look at the back, it's the same description except the colour artwork's missing from it. So I'm just going to flick through this one and give you the kind of idea what this one's like. Now, there's only so many creatures on each page, etc. And I'm not sure if being reduced in size, that the artwork's slightly more, well, I'm not saying it's clear, but more kind of compressed and kind of not as detailed looking. That one's a Ganji, I'm sure it's out of Citadel of Chaos. But this one was released in 1989 and gives you a brief description to start there. Steve Jackson and Livingstone, edited by Mark Gascoigne. Gives you the same idea. Out of the Pit. As you can see, maybe the dates there. Published in 1989, first published in 1985, which is the A4 version. Also, the maps here of, just talk that way, Alancia and Kakabad, Shamutanti Hills, various regions like Kea, City of Ports, etc. Waste, Vantiback Waste, Kakabad Sea. Again, description of the creatures there, and then, sorry, it's a bit harder to hold this one, and inside again you've got the exact same stuff except the colour maps, and you've got at the back you have the encounter tables as well at the back of the book. This book, believe it or not, it was only 4 pence dearer at £3.99 in 1989, so not much price jump in 4 years. Handier for carrying about, you can stick it in your pocket. This one's a bit larger, so that's a bit more difficult to carry. So that is it for this episode. That is Out of the Pit from 1981 to 1985. And if you like the content in this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. I really would appreciate it. The channel's still growing, it is very small, but I've got a lot of content still to cover. So that was Fighting Fantasy Out of the Pit. Thanks again for watching.